Your husband got my wife pregnant. Pay the alimony. On the biggest day of my life, my wedding day, my brother Alan dropped this bombshell. It was a mistake. Please, just pay the alimony. My sister-in-law Olivia cried as she pleaded. My name is Mia. I am a 32-year-old office worker. Until I was 29, my life was all about work. Not really, but I never met the right person, so work was all I had. Then I met him through a friend's introduction. Joseph and I started dating, and 3 years went by. I never thought about marriage, but when he suddenly said, "Let's get married," I immediately nodded. Really, you never know what life will bring. As we decided to get married, I thought about what to do first, and the obvious answer was to inform our parents. We first visited Joseph's parents. They both seemed very kind, and I felt like I could get along with them well. The introduction to Joseph's parents went smoothly. Next, it was time to visit my parents, and that's where my troubles began. My father is an ordinary businessman, and my mother is a typical housewife. They don't have particularly difficult personalities, they're just an ordinary couple. They're so ordinary that it's almost boring. These ordinary parents are not the problem. The problem is my not-so-ordinary brother. My brother Alan is 3 years older than me and is now 35. He got married 5 years ago. His wife, Olivia, is the same age as him, and they don't have children. That's their business, and I don't think anything of it. Our parents also believe that life is a gift, so they don't pressure them about grandchildren. However, her family is apparently quite noisy about it, and whenever we met, Olivia would say things like, "It's a worry you wouldn't understand, Mia, being unmarried. I'm jealous." Really? Is that so? Such a nasty comment. You're overthinking it. I don't plan to become a nasty sister-in-law like that. I'd laugh it off. Olivia and I have a relationship that's neither particularly good nor bad, but with my real brother, things were different. Alan has always had a difficult personality. In short, he can't stand it if he's not better than me. Since we were kids, he'd say things like, "You're really bad at studying, and even our parents don't love you," constantly putting me down. In contrast, Alan would boast, "I aced the test today, and Mom and Dad love me more." But I knew the truth. The good test scores he showed were from makeup tests after failing or from easy review tests, often with problems meant for younger students. The real test results, the ones that counted, went straight to the trash, and I knew this very well. As for parental love, there was no such disparity. From my perspective, our parents treated us very equally. In a way, he is a pitiable person. So I never became resentful, but rather inwardly despised him and maintained a safe distance in our sibling relationship. Alan eventually got a job, but it was at a company close to a sweatshop. His salary barely increased, and his bonuses were like pocket money. Sometimes there were no bonuses at all. His salary was so low he couldn't afford to live on his own and stayed with our parents. On the other hand, I got a job at a company that, while not a major corporation, was reasonably large. I received annual raises and proper bonuses. It might not be a top-tier company, but it was a decent one. Perhaps this wounded his pride, as his snide remarks escalated. "Someone like you looks even worse with makeup," he once shouted and threw away all my cosmetics. "You earn a lot, don't you? Give me some pocket money," he'd say, taking money from my wallet right in front of me. That time we had a physical fight, and I couldn't take it anymore, so I moved out and started living alone. For 10 years, I only went back home for Christmas. 5 years ago, with the addition of Olivia, going home became even more of a hassle. Even though I had to go back for the important matter of introducing my fiancé, it was excruciatingly painful. I've told you many times, my brother and his wife are really a handful. I repeatedly warned my fiancé, Joseph. It'll be fine. Alan aside, your parents are decent people, right? I just need to thank them for bringing you into the world. It won't be that bad. Joseph, always the optimist, said with a laugh. I couldn't help but feel anxious. Finally, we arrived at my parents' house. Oh, you've come. My mother Jennifer greeted us with a smile. Welcome, welcome. My father Ronald repeated. His smile was a bit stiff, typical of a father with a daughter about to marry. Despite being happy about his daughter finally getting married in her 30s, a father's feelings are always complex, I thought with a wry smile. I introduced Joseph, and we talked about the wedding and future plans, then chatted about trivial things, passing the time peacefully. But then, the moment finally came. Ah, the return of my forever single sister. With this sarcastic remark, Alan walked into the house. What a perfect way to start. Alan, what about work? Joseph and I had taken a day off to visit my parents, but today is a weekday. He should be at work. In fact, we timed our visit to avoid him. He and his wife live here not out of choice, but because they can't afford their own place. Yet here he was, home in the middle of the day. I gave him a puzzled look, and he smirked mischievously. How could I not be here when my dear sister's fiancé is visiting? He declared. Honestly, Alan, you're not needed, but I couldn't say that out loud, and the room filled with an awkward silence. Sensing the tension, Joseph smiled and greeted him. Nice to meet you, Alan. So refreshing, so incredibly refreshing. My fiancé is almost too charming. I could almost see a halo around him and a serene forest background behind him. So soothing. In my mind, I praised my fiancé's healing powers. As for Alan, he looked a bit strained. For someone as prideful and strong-willed as Alan, he must be a rare type. As Joseph kept smiling, we heard the door open again, and footsteps echoed. Hi, is Mia here? Alan's wife, my sister-in-law Olivia, appeared. Since they can't live on Alan's salary alone, she obviously works too. So why is she home? Why aren't they at work? Alan's sudden arrival left my parents and me dumbfounded, while Alan sat next to me. Why? And Olivia, for some reason, sat next to Joseph. Why? What's with that look? Alan's face twisted into a mean-spirited grin. I asked what that grin meant. Well, I never thought someone would actually marry you. And there it was, his second snide remark. What? Hey you, what's your name? Joseph replied, and Alan continued. Well, Joseph, if you want to call off the wedding, now's your chance. Hey, Alan! This one here is not only a visual disappointment, but if you marry her, you'll definitely regret it. She's utterly useless. Stop it! No matter how I tried to make him stop, he wouldn't. Better back out before you regret it. He insisted. I ground my teeth and was about to retort when. Mia is a wonderful woman. I just hope I can live up to her expectations. With another genuine smile, Joseph disarmed the situation. Ah, how soothing. My anger at Alan was quickly blown away by this refreshing breeze. At that moment, Olivia, who had been watching, said, Joseph, was it? You're kind. What company do you work for? I work for X Corporation. Really? That's a decent company. So, you must be making a good salary, right? Well, I think it's pretty average. They started this conversation. Alan is Alan, but Olivia is Olivia. What kind of questions are these for a first meeting?
Hey, Olivia.
What, Mia? This is important when it comes to marriage, right? I'm just making sure Ronald and Jennifer don't have to worry about their precious daughter marrying a loser.
That's none of your business.
We've already discussed all that once we decided to get married. Of course, I had talked to my parents about him before bringing him here. I wanted to say that, but couldn't in front of Joseph, so I just kept my face tense. Meanwhile, Olivia intertwined her arm with Joseph's and leaned on him.
Hey, Olivia.
What? I'm just trying to get close to my brother-in-law. Relax.
No, that's too much. Alan, come on.
I thought Alan would finally call her out, but he just started drinking a beer, even though it was still midday.
What are you doing?
What does it look like? I'm toasting to my poor sister's pitiful marriage.
Toasting to a pitiful marriage?
What the heck is that supposed to mean? Everything was a mess. My parents were flustered and couldn't handle the overbearing Alan and Olivia. Alan got drunk, and Olivia was all over Joseph. Joseph tried to push Olivia away, but she clung on stubbornly. I tried to pull her off. What is this chaos? I'm so sorry about my family. It's okay. It's even crazier than you described. You've had it rough, Mia. As we were leaving, Joseph said this to me and patted my head with a wry smile. A refreshing breeze. Despite the drama at my parents' house, once it was over, there was no need to deal with Alan and Olivia again, and things went smoothly. Then, the wedding day finally arrived. Oh, I'm so nervous. I was in the bridal waiting room, looking tense. Are you okay, Mia? I must have looked so pale and serious that my mom brought Joseph in to comfort me. He held my hand gently and reassured me, truly a husband I don't deserve. I managed to pull myself together, ready to face the day, and then...
Your dearest brother has arrived.
The door burst open with a loud noise, and chaos entered the room. I had a bad feeling about this, and Alan's grand entrance exceeded my worst expectations. Alan, know the time and place. My mom tried to scold him, but he snapped.
Shut up, Mom. I have something to say to that guy.
That guy? Alan was pointing at Joseph, who was to become my husband today. Me? Joseph was confused. Alan turned to me and said,
The man you're marrying today, your husband, got my wife pregnant.
What? I couldn't help but scream at the sudden bombshell.
The gynecologist confirmed the pregnancy. The timeline doesn't match up with me, so Olivia must be having an affair.
Even if she's having an affair, why Joseph?
Olivia told me.
What? I couldn't wrap my head around the situation. I looked back and forth between Olivia and my husband. No, I have no idea what she's talking about. My husband hastily denied it, but at that moment, Olivia, who had been cowering behind Alan, collapsed to the floor and started crying.
I'm sorry, Joseph. I told the truth about our relationship.
What? Joseph exclaimed in shock. I'm sorry, Alan. It was a moment of weakness. Now she was apologizing to Alan, crying and shouting. You ruined our marriage. Pay the alimony. Alan lunged at Joseph. My father and other relatives desperately held him back. For a while, the room was filled with Alan's heavy breathing and Olivia's sobs. Stunned, Joseph and I looked at each other. After a moment, ha, ha. I started laughing first, and then Joseph, unable to hold it in, joined in. Once we started, we couldn't stop. My makeup was ruined, but I was laughing with tears streaming down my face, while everyone else looked on in shock.
What's so funny?
Alan asked irritably.
Well, you see, right, Joseph? Yeah, Mia.
We looked at each other, tears in our eyes, and burst out laughing again.
How can you laugh in this situation? Just pay the alimony already.
It was Olivia who snapped at us. And asking for money? That was so absurd I couldn't stop laughing. Oh, that was a good laugh.
You see, there's no way Joseph could be the father of your child. What?
I wiped my tears with a tissue and said, and Olivia tilted her head in confusion. I smiled and repeated.
He can't have children. What? What do you mean? What are you talking about?
Her mask had completely slipped off. I looked at Joseph to see if I could reveal the truth, and he nodded, so I turned back to Alan and Olivia.
Joseph has a problem with his sperm. The chances of him fathering a child are 0. What?
Alan exclaimed in shock.
We had tests done at the hospital, so there's no mistake. I can even provide a doctor's note if you want. That's a lie. I'm actually pregnant.
Olivia's frantic denial was almost pitiful.
If you're really pregnant, then Joseph is not the father. If we wanted a child with Joseph, we'd need injections, medication, and possibly even IVF, serious medical intervention. What?
Olivia's face grew paler and paler. When she looked at Alan, he was glaring at her with a terrifying expression.
Mia, is that true?
It's true. Joseph himself answered Alan's question.
If you still don't believe us, you can have us tested at any hospital of your choice.
No, that's not necessary. Alan was flustered and couldn't find the words to respond to Joseph's firm stance. Then Alan turned his glare to Olivia.
Eek! Olivia, what the hell is going on? You said you were having an affair with Joseph. Yes, he contacted me and came on to me. He seemed a bit intimidating, and I couldn't refuse. But it was just a moment of weakness. The one I love is you, Alan, only you. But they say Joseph can't father a child. So, who the hell did you sleep with? He's lying.
That doesn't make any sense. I was exasperated by Olivia's desperate attempt to pin the affair on Joseph.
Since the day Olivia first met Joseph until today, we'd been together almost every day. We've been busy preparing for the wedding and our future life together. When would there have been time for an affair?
I said, and Alan responded.
You said you met Joseph often during the day and on weekends, right? Yes. Mia, stop lying. Olivia, that lie just doesn't hold up.
She really wanted to make Joseph the culprit.
Now, both of you calm down.
The unexpected voice came from Dad. His usual calm tone made me feel a bit deflated. But what he said next was far from ordinary.
If both spouses are cheating, let's call it even and move on.
I thought for a moment if calling it even was appropriate in this situation.
Huh?
I couldn't immediately grasp what Dad meant and let out a confused sound. Alan also went.
Huh?
Olivia joined in with her own.
Huh?
It was a perfect trio of confusion.
What? Dad, what are you saying?
Mia, you wouldn't know, but Jennifer and I, living with them, were aware.
What?
I was too stunned to process, and Dad gave me his usual calm smile.
Dad, stop making things up.
What do you mean making things up?
It's the truth.
Dad replied in his usual manner to the panicked Alan. This level of calm was terrifying.
Dad, what do you mean?
Olivia asked, and Mom answered with her usual smile.
Alan has been seeing another woman.
He's often taken days off work to meet her. They wait in front of the house and leave together. There's no way we wouldn't notice.
What?
Olivia screamed. Olivia, meeting men near the station isn't good. We've gotten numerous reports from neighbors about seeing you with various men.
What?
Alan screamed this time at Mom's words. According to my parents, both Alan and Olivia frequently met unknown people in the neighborhood, held hands, and went off together. They'd been seen everywhere in the neighborhood, and the rumors had reached my parents. In other words, both Alan and Olivia were having affairs. What a mess.
Olivia, what are you doing cheating on me?
You're cheating too.
At least I didn't get anyone pregnant.
I didn't plan to get pregnant either.
You're just making excuses. I'm done with you. We're getting a divorce. Pay me alimony.
What? I want a divorce too.
You should pay me alimony.
Wow, this is what a real mudslinging match looks like. Just as I thought there was no way to resolve this, Dad snapped his fingers. Immediately, uncles and older cousins came in and grabbed Alan and Olivia by the arms, dragging them out of the room. During this time, Alan and Olivia continued.
It's your fault. No, it's your fault.
They insulted each other. They made a disgraceful exit. As they left the room, their voices faded away. I later heard that my uncles gave them a good talking to and sent them packing. The room fell silent. I'm sorry. Thinking it was like a storm had passed, I apologized to Joseph, who would soon be my husband. Did you regret marrying someone with a family like this? That was my biggest fear. I had prepared myself for the possibility that the wedding might be called off. But immediately after, I was enveloped in a gentle warmth. Joseph hugged me.
It's okay. No matter what happens, I love you, Mia, and I will protect you for the rest of my life.
As he said this, tears welled up in my eyes. Afterward, redoing my makeup was a challenge, but the professionals did a beautiful job. And as the happiest bride in the world, I had a wonderful wedding. As for what happened to Alan and Olivia, they obviously got divorced. They kept hurling insults at each other, unable to have a proper conversation, and eventually took it to court, which turned into a mess. Despite both having affairs, they still managed to badmouth each other horribly. In the end, with the help of their parents' lawyers, they somehow settled it. In the end, they agreed to part ways with no alimony payments on either side. Olivia's baby was indeed not Alan's, so there were no child support payments either. As for the father of her baby, it turned out to be her married boss at work, which caused a huge scandal there too. In the end, she was abandoned by her lover and dragged back to her parents' house, crying and screaming. My parents sighed, saying it was quite a scene. As for Alan, his lover was also married, and he got sued for alimony by her husband. Having no savings, he begged our parents for help but was thrown out, as he deserved. I witnessed the moment when my usually calm parents turned into devils.
You've caused enough trouble for your sister Mia, slacking off work to fool around with your lover. We don't know such a foolish son. Get out now.
Alan was practically kicked out of the house. It was scary how terrifying normal people can be when they're angry. I have no idea what happened to him after that. He apparently got fired for skipping work to be with his lover, so I don't know how he's managing now. Not that I care. No matter what, I will never forgive him for insulting my husband on our wedding day. I can forgive what he did to me, but not what he did to Joseph. I love my husband that much. My ever-so-refreshing husband continues to bring joy into our lives. And now, we have a new happiness coming.
I can't wait to meet them,
Joseph said as he gently stroked my belly. our soon-to-arrive baby. The fertility treatments were tough, but I managed to get pregnant. There will be more challenges ahead, but I'm sure we'll be fine. With my kind, wonderful husband and our beloved child, I know we can build a happy, ordinary family.
What do you mean? Did Rebecca throw it away?
This happened at the birthday party for my son's wife, Rebecca. It was a surprise birthday party planned by me, Richard, and Rebecca's dad, John. John mentioned he'd be arriving later that day.
Happy birthday, Rebecca!
Thank you. I can't believe Katie and Richard did this for me. Her cheeks blushed with joy as she looked at the lavish spread of food I had prepared. I don't usually drink, but I think I can make an exception today. She happily started eating the food, although she never cooked herself and always acted like a princess, enjoying meals prepared by others. After we had eaten a bit, I reached into my bag and pulled out a small package. It was wrapped in pretty blue paper with a For You sticker on it.
Rebecca, here is your birthday present. Open it.
When I handed it to her, she just looked at it and sneered. Oh, is this from Katie? Looks like a gift card. How useless, it's practically trash. With that, she took the package and threw it into the nearby empty trash can.
Rebecca, Mom put a lot of thought into picking this out for you. Even if you don't want it, there's a better way to refuse. Don't yell at me like that.
As we were arguing, the doorbell rang and John arrived. Is everything okay? Did she get the present?
Wait, present from Dad?
John glanced at the package in the trash can and looked shocked.
What is this? Oh, that? I threw it away earlier. I thought it was trash. What are you talking about?
John raised his voice and explained the situation. When she learned the truth, Rebecca turned pale and started making excuses, but it was too late. And then she found out the truth she had never known before. My name is Katie. I'm a 63-year-old housewife. When my son Richard turned 4, my husband Charles passed away in a car accident, so I've been raising Richard alone ever since. Of course, working and raising a child was incredibly challenging, beyond words. Richard often caught colds, and I was frequently asked to pick him up from preschool. Each time, I had to ask my colleagues and bosses to cover for me, which they did. My job couldn't be done remotely, so even with a shortened workday, I could only leave at 4 p.m. My workplace was about 30 minutes from home, and the commute always felt long. When Richard started elementary school, he was always alone when he got home. I tried my best to make sure he didn't feel lonely, cherishing our time together after I got home.
Richard, what did you learn in school today?
Well, we had music class, and we sang this song. As he spoke, he pulled out his music textbook to show me. He pointed to a children's song.
Oh, I know this song too.
Richard seemed to enjoy music class, and every Thursday during the third period, he would tell me about it, and I would listen attentively, nodding. Richard seemed a bit physically weaker than other kids, but I thought his artistic sensitivity might be more developed, so I watched his growth closely. When Richard became a middle schooler and then a high schooler, he joined the music club and formed a band with a few friends, enjoying his student life. Eventually, he started a part-time job and used the money he saved to buy a guitar, spending weekends at the studio with his friends. Seeing Richard so lively and passionate was heartwarming, but there was also a slight feeling of sadness as I could sense him drifting away from his parents. After graduating from high school, he got a job and distanced himself even more from me. Although he still had a weak constitution, he managed to work diligently at a small factory. Richard, don't overdo it, okay?
I know, I'm fine. I'm off.
As he said this and walked out the front door, his back somehow resembled Charles's. I remembered hearing that Charles also had a tendency to catch colds easily as a child. He said it was nothing when he became an adult, but now I wondered if Richard might be the same. Still, I couldn't help but feel that I could have raised him to be stronger. Reflecting on that made me feel a bit inadequate. As time passed, Richard turned 30 and married his girlfriend, Rebecca. When Richard brought up the topic of marriage, I was truly surprised and worried about how her family would accept him, given that we didn't have a dad in our household. However, my worries were unfounded. Rebecca's dad, John, was a kind-hearted man who warmly welcomed their marriage.
When Richard visited us, his polite language left a strong impression. I thought he was a very sincere person.
John later said this with a smile, and both he and I believed that this was a very harmonious marriage. Rebecca quit her job after getting married, but later started working part-time. Because his salary was less than she had expected. Rebecca liked wearing brand-name clothes, dining at fancy restaurants, and going to spas, so she was often dissatisfied.
I thought I could relax as a housewife, but it turned out like this. It's all his fault for earning so little. Whose fault is it, really?
She would often sigh and take a mocking attitude toward both Richard and me. I'm sorry, I'll try harder.
I'm tired of hearing that.
Rebecca, please listen. I've always had a weak constitution.
That's a lie. It can't be true. It must have been Katie's fault for not raising you properly. Did she even feed you enough? Stop talking bad about Mom.
Listening to this argument was painful. It's true that I might not have fed him enough. I know saying I did my best sounds presumptuous. Rebecca probably didn't mean any harm, but hearing her words made me realize I hadn't raised Richard to be as strong as he could have been. While carrying these uneasy feelings, one day in the approaching fall, I received surprising news from Rebecca. It happened when they visited our house. By then, they had moved out of their parents' home and lived in a nearby apartment. Although it was a bit small, Richard's salary was enough to afford it, and the building was relatively new and clean. Even after moving, they would occasionally come to see me, and I thought that day would be just another routine visit.
Katie, I have wonderful news. I'm pregnant.
She said this with a beaming smile, and I was both surprised and overjoyed, unsure of what words to offer. Congratulations! I can't believe I'm going to be a grandmother so soon. As I realized I would finally become a grandma, I felt tears welling up in my eyes. Richard, too, couldn't contain his excitement and emotion.
I'm just as surprised, but really happy about it.
Apparently, they had just come back from the hospital, and Richard had just found out about the pregnancy a little while ago. Rebecca, gently rubbing her belly, looked up at me and said cheerfully,
And, Katie.
What? What is it?
Isn't there something you should give me now? You know, like a gift or something.
I didn't immediately understand what kind of gift she was referring to. I had heard of giving a gift after a child is born. However, she was only just pregnant and not even showing yet, so could she be asking for a pregnancy gift already? I held back the words.
A gift for what?
I decided to nod politely instead.
Well, yes. It was such sudden news. I haven't prepared anything yet. I'm sorry. I'll get you something next time.
That day, I treated them to dinner and then saw them off. About a week later, I got a call from Rebecca. Katie, I'm not feeling well. Could you come over and help with some chores?
Oh no, that's terrible. I'll be right over.
I remembered how tough it was when I was pregnant, feeling heavy and tired. With the thought of helping her as much as I could, I quickly got ready and headed to her apartment. However, when I arrived, she seemed fine, casually lounging on the sofa, scrolling through her phone. When Rebecca noticed me, she quickly hid her phone and started acting lethargic. Katie, you're here. Thank you so much. Ignoring her, I put down my bags and started with the cleaning and laundry. At first, I was happy to help her, but as Rebecca's belly grew, her demands escalated. It wasn't just cleaning and laundry anymore. She also had me cooking and grocery shopping, eventually giving me lists to buy everyday items.
Rebecca, being pregnant isn't an illness. Can't you try doing some things on your own?
When I protested, she clearly got upset and pretended to cry. Katie, don't be so mean. I'm carrying your grandchild. Shouldn't you be doing more for your adorable grandchild? She would also say things like, I'm feeling so down. Or, I'm so nauseous I could throw up. Blaming me for various things. I truly wanted to help for the sake of my grandchild, but it felt like I was being treated like a housekeeper. Feeling frustrated, I went to their apartment as usual. I opened the door and walked in, finding no one in the living room. I heard the sound of water from the shower room. Realizing Rebecca was in the shower, I placed the groceries in the kitchen and started vacuuming the floor. Then, Rebecca's phone on the living room table buzzed. The screen, facing up, showed a friendly text from a man.
Can't wait to see you again, Rebecca. When are you free next? The text read.
Seeing this, I felt suspicious. It was clear that this text wasn't from Richard. After confirming Rebecca was still in the shower, I took a photo of the text with my phone. Not daring to unlock her phone, I quietly continued with the cleaning and preparing dinner. About half a month had passed, and I realized that Rebecca's birthday was approaching. So, I decided to plan a surprise birthday party for her without her knowing, and after discussing it with Richard, we also decided to invite John.
Thank you, Mom. Rebecca loves surprises, so she'll definitely be happy.
I hope so. I'll make lots of healthy dishes. I'll contact John myself.
I can't wait.
Both Richard and I were eagerly looking forward to that day. Planning for such an occasion is always exciting. One day, after returning home from their apartment, I discovered an envelope in my mailbox. In the empty lot next door, the cicadas were singing. Hearing their sorrowful sound, I took out the contents of the envelope and looked at it carefully. I knew it. I muttered to myself, put the contents back in the envelope, and felt a little down. Then, trying to change my mood, I opened the front door and went inside. And then, the day of the birthday party arrived. Richard, Rebecca, and I gathered at the apartment. John would be arriving later.
Happy birthday, Rebecca!
Since we were in an apartment, we didn't use party poppers out of consideration for the neighbors. I thought someone might complain, but Rebecca, perhaps feeling superior as the star of the day, didn't seem to mind. Thank you. I can't believe Katie and Richard planned such a surprise for me. Blushing with joy, she looked at the many lavish dishes I had prepared. I can't drink alcohol, but it's nice to have something like this once in a while. Eating happily, I thought how she always acted like a princess, never cooking herself. After we had eaten most of the meal, I took out a small package from my bag. It was wrapped in a cute blue wrapping paper with a sticker that said "For You" on it.
Rebecca, here's your birthday present. Open it.
When I handed it to her, Rebecca looked at it briefly and sneered.
Is this from Katie? It looks like a gift card, but this kind of thing is just trash.
She then grabbed the package and, unbelievably, threw it into a nearby empty trash can. While I was in shock, she laughed and held out her hand.
I'd rather have cash.
I was so stunned, I couldn't speak. She prefers cash over a present? But that gift was. While I was too shaken to say anything, Richard spoke up first.
Rebecca, Mom put a lot of thought into choosing that gift for you. Can't you at least say thank you? Even if you don't like it, there's a better way to refuse.
Don't yell at me like that. It hurts my stomach. It's your fault, Richard. Rebecca pretended to be scared and clutched her stomach, crouching down. Realizing that she intended to play the victim, I felt a sudden chill and couldn't bear to look at her anymore. Just then, the doorbell rang. Everyone's attention turned to the door, and I hurried to answer it, finding John there.
Good evening, sorry I'm late.
He stood there with a smile, scratching his head shyly.
Thank you for inviting me to Rebecca's birthday.
I welcomed him with a smile. No, thank you for coming. Rebecca and Richard are both waiting for you. As John walked in, he seemed to sense something strange, looking puzzled.
Hey, Rebecca. Your belly is really showing now. I'm so happy to celebrate your birthday with you. It seemed like there was some commotion earlier. Is everything okay? Did you get the gift? Huh? Present from Dad?
Rebecca couldn't hide her surprise at the unexpected guest, but what was to come would shock her even more. John suddenly noticed the discarded wrapping paper in the trash can.
What's this?
It was the wrapping Rebecca had just thrown away, and John looked at it in disbelief. Rebecca, however, responded childishly.
Oh, that. I threw it away earlier. Thought it was trash. What do you mean? You threw it away.
John pressed Rebecca firmly.
What? What do you mean? Isn't that the gift card Katie got? What are you talking about?
John snapped and explained the situation. When we were planning this birthday party, I had a phone call with John about the gift. John remembered that Rebecca had always wanted to go on a trip abroad, and he suggested giving her tickets for her birthday. I agreed, and we decided to buy the tickets together and present them at this party. That was the wrapped item from earlier. Upon realizing this, Rebecca's face turned pale, and she began to fumble for excuses.
I wasn't told anything about this, and I didn't know. You didn't know? You can't even say thank you?
I calmed John down and said, Well, John. We have other gifts for her too. I signaled Richard, who pulled an envelope from under the table and handed it to Rebecca.
Rebecca, this is from me,
he said in a low voice, avoiding her gaze as she took the envelope. She looked inside suspiciously and was instantly speechless. Inside was the result of an investigation into Rebecca's infidelity.
Mom told me, Rebecca. You've been cheating, haven't you? She showed me pictures of notifications from your phone screen.
I had shown Richard those photos on a day when I visited this apartment while Rebecca was in the shower. I then advised him to hire a detective to investigate. Of course, I arranged for the envelope to be sent to our home, not this apartment, so Rebecca wouldn't find out. The investigation confirmed that Rebecca was indeed cheating, and the other person was also married. Rebecca trembled as she stared at the documents.
I didn't want to believe it either, and I didn't want it to come to this. But if you apologize, Rebecca, I'll let it go.
Before Richard could finish, she slammed the papers onto the table and defiantly said,
Yes, he's a colleague from work. He's very supportive and kind, so I ended up having a relationship with him. The baby I'm carrying is probably his. What?
Richard was deeply hurt by her blunt words, momentarily taken aback.
The timing suggests so, but what of it? Everyone thought this child was their grandchild anyway, right? So why not just go with that?
Rebecca showed no remorse, nor did she apologize. The one who couldn't stand the situation and got angry was not Richard, but John.
Rebecca, how could you do such a thing?
John's face turned beet red, and he was trembling with rage. It seemed he was about to grab her, but he was desperately trying to hold back. Both Richard and I were so shocked by his intense anger that we couldn't move.
John, what on earth?
That was all I could manage to say. John's anger had reached its peak. Rebecca, I wish I could have told you differently, but there's no other way now. The truth is, you are actually the child of my ex-wife's affair.
What?
When she tried to abandon you, I took you in as my own daughter and raised you by myself. So, you and I are not biologically related. I wanted to keep this hidden. Everyone present was stunned by John's painful revelation. Rebecca had ended up doing the same thing as her mother, hurting both her husband, Richard, and John. John, who had been betrayed by both his beloved wife and the daughter he raised, must have been in deep shock. John said bitterly, I can no longer think of you as my daughter. I'm severing all ties with you. Rebecca, with a look of shock on her face, could only stare at John.
No, why?
Of course, neither Richard nor I could find any words to say to them, and we just stood there. Feeling that there was no way to continue in a celebratory mood, I decided to end the gathering for the day. John awkwardly left, telling me he would contact me later. By the way, the results of the investigation were also sent to the home of the affair partner. His wife was furious and confronted Rebecca, demanding a settlement later. Rebecca had assumed that her affair partner would naturally take her side, but a few weeks later, He quit his job and told Rebecca not to contact him anymore. He also said he would not acknowledge the child. In a panic, she turned to me to help reconcile with Richard, but I firmly refused. Considering her attitude after finding out about the pregnancy and her defiant demeanor when everything was revealed that night, I didn't think she was genuinely remorseful. Of course, Richard seemed to share John's opinion.
Rebecca, it's over. I can't trust you anymore. I'll be moving out of this apartment soon, so you should prepare to leave as well. And I will be claiming compensation in the divorce court.
Richard reportedly handed her the divorce papers as he said this. She faced a large financial claim, which would likely exhaust all her savings from her working days. Moreover, she would lose the funds needed for childbirth and child-rearing, and even if she worked, it would be difficult to pay it all off.
Richard, please, I want to get back together with you. You're the only one I can rely on.
Unable to return to John's place, she clung to Richard, pleading for reconciliation, but Richard coldly brushed her off.
Sorry, I don't want to be involved anymore.
The following month, Rebecca moved out of the apartment. Richard moved into my place, and Rebecca stayed temporarily at a hotel. Later, Rebecca, heavily pregnant, came to our place, just as Richard and I had finished loading our moving truck.
Wait, where are you moving? I want to come with you.
The movers seemed to think she was moving too and paused their work, but I told them not to worry about it, and the truck's back door closed mercilessly.
Don't tell me. Just don't ever show yourself in front of me again.
Richard didn't even make eye contact with her and got into my car. We followed the moving truck to our next residence. In the rearview mirror, I saw Rebecca running desperately after us, but she soon got out of breath and sat down. Being pregnant, she must have realized she couldn't chase after us any further, and she stared at us in disbelief. There's a saying about reaping what you sow, and this must be the consequence she has to face. Her life and the life of her unborn child would be filled with rough waters, but I couldn't muster any sympathy. Later, I also met and talked with John. John constantly expressed his apologies to me and Richard.
I thought I raised Rebecca properly, but it seems I only thought so. I feel terrible for what Richard went through. Please forget about Rebecca and me, and live your life.
We moved out of the house the following week, but during that time, Richard seemed to be in a somber mood, contemplating something. While driving to our new place, Richard suddenly said,
"Mom, I'm thinking of starting a band. Just as a hobby, not professionally."
I thought he'd be heartbroken over the divorce, but seeing him trying to move forward in his own way, I felt relieved.
That sounds great. You've always loved music. It's wonderful to immerse yourself in something you love.
In the back seat of the car, Richard's guitar case from high school seemed to be looking at him. Through the windshield, the high, clear autumn sky was brilliantly blue. At our new place, Richard and I were ready to start anew.
Wait, $1.3 thousand?
That summer, I was shocked when I saw our electric bill.
How could it be this much?
Living modestly with just David, we couldn't possibly be using that much electricity.
We should ask the power company to investigate.
Yes, that sounds like the best idea. We contacted the power company and had a specialist come out to our home.
Well, there seems to be an extra line here.
After inspecting, it turned out someone had been stealing electricity from our home.
Where does this extra line lead to? Over there.
The engineer pointed to a house we didn't expect.
Let's cut the extra line to save on electricity. Yeah, especially since we can't ignore the summer electric bill.
We knew that cutting the extra line would cut off electricity to that house completely. But we knew we were in the right, so we decided to have it cut.
Wah!
Right after the cut, a scream echoed throughout the neighborhood. I, Samantha, am a 58-year-old who helps my husband, David, with the office work for his construction business. Not to brag, but David is a man of great integrity, someone who hates anything dishonest and stands up for what's right, and I'm proud of him. David and I met through an introduction, and I've never regretted it for a second. In fact, I think it was the best introduction ever. David's family has been farmers for generations, and on a large piece of inherited land, we built our construction business and our home. Even with the business and home, we still have a lot of unused land with no current plans for it. Hey, David? How about we turn some of the unused land into a parking lot?
That's a good idea, but I'd rather use it for our kids.
His kind and thoughtful nature for our children meant I had no objections. Our family includes our son Andrew and our daughter Nicole, both of whom are married and living independently. Andrew lives in a nearby apartment with his wife, Kayla, whom he met in college. Nicole works for a large construction company and married her coworker, Justin. They live in company housing with their 3-year-old daughter, Sarah, my beloved granddaughter. David is 62 but still energetic. Even so, he isn't immortal, and we can't avoid the issue of finding a successor for the business. Normally, Andrew would be the natural choice, but we've accepted that it won't happen. It's not that there's anything wrong with Andrew, but we've chosen to prioritize his dreams. What are those dreams? Andrew has loved tropical fish since he was a child, and we supported him in pursuing that passion. I'm proud of my husband for being so open-minded and supportive. Even if it means our business might end with us, it's not something we worry about too much. Andrew, true to the saying passion breeds proficiency, eventually began managing a tropical fish specialty store, and his work has been going smoothly. Our relationship has been quite harmonious. Of course, Kayla and Andrew haven't had any problems either. If I had to nitpick, it would be that Andrew's love for tropical fish sometimes leads him to impulsively buy expensive fish. However, he has never asked us for money, and he seems to manage it responsibly, so there's no need to worry. Andrew and Kayla often shared their dreams with us.
I want to own my house someday. When I do, I'll have a room just for my tropical fish. When I own my house, I want to get a dog. A Yorkshire Terrier would be nice.
Currently, they live in an apartment, so they can't have a dedicated room for tropical fish or even keep pets. There was no reason to criticize their dreams. I could imagine that to fulfill those dreams, they would eventually need to own their own home. However, understanding they had their circumstances, we decided to take a supportive stance and only offer help if asked. One Christmas, both Andrew and Nicole's families came to our home.
Merry Christmas, Dad.
Merry Christmas. Happy holidays, Samantha.
Happy holidays, David, Samantha.
Grandpa, Grandma, Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas, Andrew, Nicole, Sarah. And Kayla and Justin too. Seeing our children and grandchild looking so well gave us hope for a bright future.
Merry Christmas. Andrew, how's the store doing?
It's going well.
That's great to hear.
David nodded happily, and I felt the same way. How about you, Nicole?
Nothing out of the ordinary.
No news is good news. After the greetings and catching up, Andrew spoke with a somewhat serious expression. Hey, Dad, Mom. I have something to discuss with you. Is that okay?
What's up?
No need for formalities now. David responded warmly, and after a moment of gathering his thoughts, Andrew began. Yeah. I was wondering if there's any cheap land around here. Land? What's this about? Kayla answered my question.
Actually, Andrew and I talked it over and we think it's time for us to have our own house.
In today's world, owning a home isn't an obligation or a goal, but knowing they had reached this point gave me a sense of relief. However, acquiring land for a new home comes with significant costs. It's only natural for parents to want to ease their children's burden as much as possible.
If that's your goal, you don't need to look for land. There's plenty of unused land on our property. It's large enough to build a house comfortably. Samantha, do you have any objections?
No, I think it's a great way to make use of the land. Of course, it's up to Andrew and Kayla if they don't mind. He responded with a beaming smile.
Really? That would be a huge help. Land costs can be quite a burden.
Seeing their joy made our proposal more than worthwhile.
While we can rely on you for the land, I'm still worried about the mortgage. Will we be able to manage it?
Although Andrew is a business owner, running a store doesn't guarantee large profits, so Kayla's concern was understandable.
In that case, how about this?
David suggested that our construction company and Justin's building company handle the construction. We would cover the costs up front, and Andrew and Kayla would repay us monthly, avoiding loan interest.
Justin, do you have any issues with this?
No, not at all. We're in business too, so as long as we get paid, we'll do the work. And since it's family, we can offer a discount. Thank you, Justin. Seeing our son's smiles was the best reward.
You can repay the costs monthly into my store's business account. And if times are tough, there's no need to strain yourself to make a payment.
David then asked Andrew and Kayla to create a detailed budget and repayment plan before starting the project. Thank you for everything. We'll get started right away. Thank you for me too. This is such a stroke of luck.
You're very welcome.
Seeing Andrew and Kayla's grateful expressions assured us we had done the right thing. Soon after, Andrew submitted the repayment plan as instructed by David, and the construction of their new home by our company and Justin's began. Before the work started, Andrew showed us the floor plan with excitement. My dream is coming true. I'm going to have a room just for my tropical fish in the new house. There's no law against keeping a dog in your own home. I can finally get my Yorkshire Terrier. Andrew and Kayla's hopeful smiles were priceless, and I couldn't help but smile too. By the time summer came around, Andrew and Kayla's new home was completed, and they moved in with many tropical fish and a dog. It wasn't long after Andrew and Kayla started their new life that Andrew came to us with a concern.
Sorry, Dad. Can you hold off on the repayment for the house this month? Things are a bit tight. I can do that, but you must pay next month. We need to be strict about this.
Yeah, I understand. I assumed Andrew's tropical fish store wasn't doing well that month and didn't think much of it. One day, an engineer from the electric company visited our home. We'll be doing some work next door, so your power will be out for a while. We apologize for the inconvenience. Okay, I understand. We had no reason to interfere with the work being done on Andrew's house and agreed without a fuss. The work only took a few hours, and while it was inconvenient not having the air conditioning, we managed. However, when we received our electricity bill that month, we were shocked. $1,300? What on earth is going on? Since our construction business was on a company account, this amount was outrageous for a two-person household. I first suspected a meter reading error and immediately contacted the electric company. However, they confirmed that the reading was accurate and that the bill reflected our actual usage. We couldn't fathom using that much electricity, leaving us baffled.
How can this be happening? We haven't used that much power. There's always a cause. If we're getting a bill like this without using that much electricity, it might mean someone is stealing our power.
David's hypothesis seemed outlandish, but considering all possibilities, it started to make sense.
Should we call the electric company for an investigation?
Yes. We'll need to be present during the inspection. We promptly contacted the electric company, explained the situation, and requested an investigation. An engineer arrived quickly and began inspecting the external wiring. Well, there's an extra branch line here. Your electricity is being diverted elsewhere. I couldn't believe it at first, but seeing the additional wiring made it clear. This would explain the high bill if the other household is using a lot of electricity. David's suspicion was confirmed. Someone was indeed stealing our electricity. Who would do such a thing? Can you tell where this line goes? Yes, it leads to that house over there. The engineer pointed to Andrew's new house. Well, isn't that surprising? David's calm tone indicated he was furious. It was hard to believe that Andrew, whom we trusted, would do something like this. There was no excuse for this behavior, even from our son. I recalled the earlier visit from the other engineer who mentioned some work. Since amateur work on electrical systems is unlikely, Andrew must have lied to steal electricity. Engineer, can you cut this extra line right now? Yes, I can. But it will cut off all power to that house. It is undoubtedly troublesome for any household to have its electricity cut off in this season, but there's no reason to show mercy to a son who steals electricity from his parents' home. Cut the unused wire to save energy. Yes, exactly. We can't ignore the summer electricity bills. Who would allow someone to continue using electricity for free? David and I agreed, so we had the wire cut immediately. David brought out some tools from the company's storage and handed them to the engineer. Please use these. No, thank you. We have our own specialized tools. Thinking about it, it wouldn't make sense for a professional engineer to use tools provided by someone else. I felt a bit embarrassed for letting my anger get the best of me. For safety reasons, we'll turn off the breaker. Is that okay? Yes, go ahead. Anyone would know that cutting a live wire is dangerous, so we first turned off the breaker for the entire house. Now, I'll cut the wire. Go ahead and do it. Though cutting a wire doesn't require any special effort, David's words were appropriate, as it felt satisfying to finally resolve the issue. It's done. Thank you. With the unnecessary branch wire cut, the issue was resolved. Ah! Right after, a loud scream echoed from Andrew's house, loud enough to be heard throughout the neighborhood. Wah! Why? Andrew, looking pale, rushed out of his house. When he saw us, his face twisted as David glared at him with a furious expression. As mentioned before, David is a person who absolutely does not tolerate dishonesty. Given that his trusted son had betrayed him, I could understand his anger, and I felt the same. Why are you in such a hurry, Andrew? Well, my tropical fish are dying because the electricity was cut off. Do you love the fish you raise with the electricity you stole from us? Andrew was drenched in sweat, trembling as if he were in a cold place. Explain your reasoning. Yes. Andrew, unable to stand from fear, collapsed to his knees and confessed the truth. The electric bills are really high. And we need to keep the air conditioning on all the time for Kayla's dog. I understood his reasoning, but that didn't make it excusable. Recently, the electric bills have gone up, and we're struggling financially. So you decided to steal our electricity? Yes. Even though he was our son, Andrew's motive was incomprehensible to us. Everyone has different values, but this was unacceptable. Sure, Andrew's tropical fish and Kayla's dog might be important to them. However, hobbies are meant to be enjoyed when you have enough financial stability to afford them. To steal electricity for such reasons was outrageous. Please forgive us. We will pay for the electricity we used.
and we will make a formal apology later.
Given that not having electricity would seriously affect our daily lives, I asked the engineer. Engineer, please restore the electrical wiring to its original state. Understood. After that, the electrical wiring was restored, and we no longer had to worry about our electricity bill. A few days later, Andrew and Kayla came to our house to apologize.
We are deeply sorry for what we've done. We're really sorry.
Though they apologized profusely, it wasn't something we could easily forgive.
I never thought I'd have a thief for a son. We're cutting ties with you. Leave that house. We will buy it back.
David's stern demeanor left Andrew with no choice but to agree.
Understood.
Shortly after that, Andrew and Kayla moved out of their new home, and I had no way or opportunity to learn about their subsequent lives. However, according to rumors, Andrew's tropical fish store had to close down due to financial difficulties. Although it was no longer my concern, Andrew had been dedicated to tropical fish since childhood and possessed no other significant knowledge or skills. It seemed unlikely that he could rebuild the store, and he would probably have to switch to a different industry. However, if asked what kind of industry that might be, I had no idea. Considering Andrew's single-minded focus on tropical fish, it might be unrealistic for him to start anew in a different field. Nevertheless, it was no longer relevant to me, and pondering over it was meaningless, so I decided not to think about it any further. Sometime later, I saw a rare news story about a theft at an aquarium on TV. The culprit was Andrew. He confessed to stealing the fish for both personal enjoyment and for resale. Even if you put it in the best possible light, his deep love for tropical fish was no excuse for getting arrested. Is this what they mean by love being too much?
I guess so.
In any case, it was something unforgivable. Even if we showed our anger, it wouldn't erase Andrew's crime, and since we had already cut ties with him, we decided to leave the rest to the police. Incidentally, Andrew was later indicted and convicted in court, but that was of no concern to us. However, as if to balance out the bad with some good, shortly after Andrew and Kayla's issue was resolved, I received a call from Nicole.
Hey, Mom? Guess what? We're expecting our second child.
It was undoubtedly good news. But we're a bit in a bind. Our current company housing is barely enough for 3 of us. We need a bigger place to live.
Well, I have a bright idea. Come over so I can explain it to you.
Later, Nicole and her family came to our house, and we first celebrated the news of their second child.
By the way, how's Andrew doing? It's so quiet next door.
Nicole asked casually, and I realized I hadn't told her about disowning Andrew. Well, actually, I decided to explain the whole situation and its outcome to Nicole.
That's terrible. I can't believe he would do something like that.
Nicole's anger was natural and justified, and it seemed she needn't worry about anything else. Justin, just to be sure, do you have any expensive hobbies?
Don't worry. I mostly just read books and use my smartphone, so there shouldn't be any problem.
That's a relief.
But why did you ask Justin about his hobbies, Mom?
Well, you see, David and I then explained that we were in a position to resolve Nicole's family's housing problem quickly. We decided to give the now vacant house that Andrew and Kayla had left to Nicole and her family.
I swear we would never do anything like steal electricity. You can rest assured about that. But is it really okay? Yes, it feels like $2,000 a gift. We are grateful for the offer, but it feels a bit too much.
Despite their surprise and modesty, it would be a bit of a hassle for us to keep an unused house. Additionally, even if we sold it, the value would decrease no matter how good the condition was, so it wouldn't mean much. And more importantly, since it was on David's property, it would be awkward if someone else moved in.
Please accept it without any reservations. Don't feel any undue burden about this.
Yes, we're family, after all.
Thank you very much.
Justin's sincere gratitude reflected his good nature, making us feel reassured. Afterward, Nicole's family moved into the house next door, and not long after, their second child, our new grandchild, was born. Justin diligently pursued his work, and though I didn't pry into the details, there was never any talk of financial struggles in Nicole's household. We maintained a healthy and close relationship with Nicole's family, and having our two grandchildren nearby provided a sense of security. Thus, I spent my days happily watching my adorable grandchildren grow up.
I feel great.
Give me the mic. My drunk mother-in-law, Diana, grabbed the microphone from my friend during her speech and started talking. My father-in-law, Stephen, was completely wasted, causing a ruckus with the relatives. To make things worse, Diana made a speech mocking me. What did I ever do to her? Why do I deserve this? Just when I was about to burst into tears, my niece Elizabeth said something that completely changed the atmosphere of the room. My name is Mary. I'm 48 years old and have gained quite a bit of weight from indulging in buffet meals with my husband, Kevin. And to make matters worse, Kevin seems to lose weight effortlessly with just a bit of exercise.
Isn't it great? Now we can eat even more.
When he said that, I was so annoyed that I almost considered switching his dinners to lard for a week. I love Kevin, but right now, I hate his metabolism. I keep telling myself I'll get fit and make him fall for me all over again, but here I am, enjoying another delicious meal. I married my husband, Kevin, who is a year younger than me, 5 years ago. Thanks to our strong bond, our relationship progressed smoothly from dating to marriage, but things got tough after that. During a family meeting,
"Why did you marry an older woman who can't even have children?"
Diana said. Stephen also sighed deeply, saying,
"I wanted a young wife for my son."
My first impression of them was that they were extremely rude people. According to Kevin, his family is like a den of evil. Diana has always been harsh on the women Kevin brings home, and his previous girlfriend was driven away, preventing their marriage. Stephen is a womanizer. He's cheated multiple times in the past and has no interest in Diana. Their marriage is strained because of it. Stephen's desire for a younger wife likely stems from his wish for
a bit of eye candy around the house,
which Diana can't provide. Despite their strong opposition, Kevin said,
"Let's just get married without their permission."
But I didn't think that was the right way, so I kept visiting my in-laws' house to gain their approval for our marriage. Because I love Kevin. It's only natural to want to get along with his family. Especially since I didn't want to get married while being opposed by them. So, after finally getting their approval and achieving our marriage, one day, Diana said something like this.
"You know, my mother-in-law used to torment me all the time. So, I decided that when my son got a wife, I'd do the same."
Seeing Diana speak with an untroubled smile sent chills down my spine. In short, our age difference didn't matter at all. She just wanted to harass someone, no matter what. Surely, Kevin's previous girlfriends were harassed without any fault of their own. I decided to keep a suitable distance and minimize interactions with her as much as possible. However, when we started looking for a wedding venue, Diana began to interfere.
"You should incorporate your parents' opinions into the wedding,"
she said. But it's our wedding, and they're not even paying for it. Why should we go that far? Needless to say, that's what I thought. However, when I talked to my already married friends about it, I was told the same thing and ended up incorporating my in-laws' opinions. Many of them said, "After all, they're your husband's parents. It seems to be a matter of showing some respect." Though I felt uneasy, I could see some sense in that. Kevin said, "Just ignore them." But it's their only son's wedding. We couldn't just ignore them. At least, we decided to listen to their opinions even if we didn't necessarily follow them. However, I soon regretted that decision. They proposed a venue run by one of Diana's friends, claiming the venue we had in mind was too expensive. It was old and had reviews on the site saying things like, "The proceedings were different than planned," or "They got our names wrong." Of course, Kevin vetoed that, but then they started saying things like, "Make sure the bride's dress is cheap." She suggested using hand-me-downs from her own wedding to save money, saying not to waste money. Who would want to wear something covered in cobwebs and aged over time? I knew Diana's real intention was simply that she didn't want to see the bride being the center of attention. So I flatly refused. She made all sorts of other demands, but they were all absurd suggestions that would have made the wedding a disaster if we had accepted them, so we ended up rejecting most of her requests. In retrospect, this might have ignited Diana's spiteful spirit. Up until the last minute, Diana kept saying things like, "Have the wedding abroad because I want to travel." Or, "If you don't listen to me, I won't attend the wedding." Despite being exasperated by Diana's constant complaints, we somehow managed to get through it as a couple, and finally, the wedding day arrived. Diana showed up in morning attire. It wasn't a formal black suit, but a full-on dress that looked like morning clothes. I felt the pressure of her message. "I don't approve of this wedding." 2 weeks earlier, she had said, "I'm not coming to your wedding." So I had responded with, "Then you don't have to attend." Perhaps that had offended her. She didn't show up in the waiting room and was already seated among the relatives when I noticed, making it difficult to ask her to leave given the atmosphere of the venue. But to anyone watching, it was clear. The groom's wife and her mother-in-law don't get along. My friends and relatives all had troubled expressions on their faces. As the program of the ceremony progressed, the behavior of the groom's relatives gradually became strange. They drank too much and got completely drunk, even heckling the movie Kevin's friend had made for us. We had to ask the staff to remove those relatives. Even Stephen got drunk, swinging around a bottle of homemade liquor brought by a relative like it was a penlight. At the peak of it all, "Waiter! More beer!" he shouted. This is not a pub. Some guests were even let out by the staff, saying they felt sick. Thanks to the staff's consideration, the ceremony managed to proceed, but all my guests were feeling repulsed. It's no wonder, given this nightmare scenario. Kevin and I spent most of the ceremony looking down in shame. It was the worst. And then, during the speech by my friend representing my side, the incident happened. Suddenly, a slightly tipsy Diana snatched the microphone from my friend in the middle of her speech, saying, "I'm in such a good mood, lend me the mic." And then she started to speak. "All right, the groom's mother will give a speech now." Kevin and I were stunned by this unexpected turn of events. Even the staff, seeing Diana's natural movements despite her being drunk, were thrown off, wondering, "Wait, was this part of the plan? Let's talk about Mary. I hear she has been a hard worker since she was a child." To my surprise, Diana's comment wasn't a bad one. If she wasn't saying anything negative, it would be better not to create a worse atmosphere by forcibly removing her. Pretending this was planned from the start might work. The staff and Kevin asked if they should stop her, but I decided to see how it would go. She lost her father when she was young, then later her mother, and her sister, 10 years her senior, raised her in place of her parents. That sister also passed away from a chronic illness not too long ago. Mary is a remarkable woman who has faced hardships my son couldn't even imagine. Listening for a while, Diana's speech wasn't bad. She talked about how my parents passed away, and although I faced hardships, I managed to go to college with the support of my sister and others. It's a heavy story not really suited for a celebratory occasion, but it was true to my life and not a lie. She was properly acknowledging my past, and my relatives were moved to tears by her words. It was a good speech. I even thought Diana had a good side. But about 30 minutes into the speech, Diana said this. But don't you think it's because Mary is a bad luck charm that her parents died and her sister passed away young from a chronic illness? I was truly shocked when I heard this at the family meeting. She probably just wants attention, like, oh, poor me, I've had such a hard life. She wants to brag about her hardships, right? She's so oblivious, she doesn't realize we have no interest in such stories. Everyone, not just me, was dumbfounded by Diana's laughing words. Since everyone was drawn into my past story, the sudden shift in Diana's tone was shocking. What Diana did was ultimately to reveal my painful past in front of everyone and mock it. I talked about my family during the family meeting because I couldn't hide the fact that my parents were gone, and I never intended it to be a tale of woe. If I could, I would still want to meet my living family members. There's no way I was boasting about my misfortunes. I knew my bridal makeup would be ruined, but I couldn't help it and tears began to fall. At that moment, ha ha ha, resounding in the silent hall was the voice of my niece, Elizabeth, who was in the 10th grade. Thinking her speech had been well received, Diana, in high spirits, said, I'm glad to see you enjoyed it. Then Elizabeth stood up. No, that's not it. And she said, You say Mary is bragging about her misfortunes, but what are you old hag trying to do by droning on about someone's hardships? Look at this awkward atmosphere.
Who are you calling old hag? I'm the groom's mother. You rude little girl.
Seeing the furious Diana, Elizabeth laughed mockingly again. Who is the rude one here? You showed up to a wedding in mourning attire, and then you tried to make fun of the bride. Well, no one is laughing, so you're just making a fool of yourself. Not only do you lack common sense, but you also have no idea how to read the room. Isn't that embarrassing? Even a little girl like me knows this situation is embarrassing. Maybe it's because you're getting old and everything is starting to deteriorate? Saying that, Elizabeth raised her hands and shrugged, as if to say, Oh well. Making Diana's face turn bright red.
Unbelievable! How dare you? Mary, how could you let Elizabeth talk to her elders like that?
Diana glared at me as she spoke. With all due respect, I think Elizabeth is right. Diana, your speech wasn't part of the program, and if you were sharing something entertaining, that would be different. But please don't interrupt my friend's speech with such a tedious story. It's very unpleasant.
That's right, Mom. I don't know why you want to humiliate Mary in front of everyone, but can't you see everyone feels uncomfortable? You're not just being mean, you're coming off as an ignorant person, as Elizabeth said.
At our words, Diana's face turned even redder, like a tomato, making us want to say, Can you still blush?
Unbelievable! 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 What do you think of your elders, your parents? How could you embarrass me like this?
You embarrassed yourself with your actions. Elizabeth's quick retort made my guests start laughing, even though the in-laws were still heavily drunk. That's right. Since we've been respecting you as an elder, let me say what everyone hasn't dared to say, old hag. Elizabeth's sudden innocent smile caught Diana off guard, making her momentarily speechless.
Your dress is inside out. What?
Elizabeth's remark caused laughter to erupt in the hall. Everyone had noticed that Diana was wearing her dress inside out. You'd think someone from the in-laws' side would have pointed it out, but most of their guests were men. Moreover, it seemed no one had much interest in Diana's dress. No one bothered to tell her.
Showing up in morning attire and then wearing it inside out, how embarrassing. People like you really do live long, don't they?
As Elizabeth laughed, Diana, finally realizing her embarrassment, desperately tried to cover her chest with her hands. Stephen, seeing this, burst out laughing.
Ha ha ha.
Stephen pointed at Diana and laughed. Everyone, including Kevin and me, and probably our guests, noticed Diana's eyes filled with anger, but Stephen and the in-laws' guests didn't seem to catch on.
Well, I guess I'll look for a new wife then.
Stephen laughed. Then a relative from the in-laws' side shouted, "What about Nancy from the bar?" Stephen responded,
"Oh, right, right."
And they all started laughing and having a great time. Diana's existence was already forgotten.
Even Stephen. Unbelievable. Do you enjoy embarrassing me like this in such a place?
Diana shouted in anger, but soon she grabbed a bottle of liquor from a nearby table and headed towards Stephen.
I won't forgive you.
Diana raised the bottle, making Stephen turn pale. Everyone thought, "This is bad, the police might be called." Just then, Elizabeth rushed in and splashed the liquor from the table all over Diana and Stephen.
Cool down. Are you going to cause more trouble at someone's wedding? Staff! Get these people out of here!
Though everyone was stunned by the series of bizarre events, Elizabeth's words brought them back to reality, and the staff hurriedly restrained Diana and Stephen. The staff asked, "Is it all right if we escort your parents out?" Kevin and I both smiled.
Please do.
And we answered. So, the chaotic wedding finally came to an end amidst all the commotion. A few days later, we went to visit my in-laws with my late sister's husband, Thomas. Thomas came along because Elizabeth was deeply involved in the incident, and my sister, who was like a parent to me, was no longer there. Thomas was also very angry that my wedding was ruined. And he intended to make the in-laws pay for the wedding expenses. At first, the in-laws resisted, saying things like,
I was drunk.
Or,
it's not right to solve this with money.
However, when Thomas, a former boxer still muscular, lightly grabbed Stephen by the collar.
Yes, we will pay.
Stephen quickly said. He must have been really scared. They paid the entire wedding cost in cash that day, and at the same time, Kevin declared he was cutting ties with them. Kevin bowed his head to me, saying,
I should have done this sooner.
But I couldn't blame Kevin. I was also at fault for letting my guard down, even for a moment, thinking,
maybe they'll say something nice.
We decided to become a good couple by overcoming such hardships. After that, Stephen ended up in a wheelchair last year, and Diana contacted us.
Please help with caregiving.
But Kevin ignored it. Apparently, Diana also has some difficulty with her hands due to arthritis. She seemed desperate and turned to Kevin for help.
You're not my parents anymore.
Kevin refused to help. The other day, I passed by the area where my in-laws' house used to be, and it was just an empty lot now. Maybe they both went to a facility, but they probably don't have the money for that. Maybe Stephen, in his wheelchair, got into a facility, but Diana might be living somewhere in a park. Come to think of it, I think I saw someone who looked like her in the park recently. Well, they're strangers. Now, so it's none of my business. I probably won't ever see them again. Meanwhile, we're still living our lives quietly. 2 years later, we added some of our own money to the wedding costs we got back and had a ceremony at a chapel abroad, and finally went on a delayed honeymoon. It was a redo of the wedding. No one from the in-laws' side was invited, but everyone I asked from my side came, and it turned out to be a great ceremony. Elizabeth even said,
I was sad thinking that terrible wedding would be the end, so I'm glad.
She gave us a generous wedding gift from the part-time job she worked hard at and a portrait of us that she drew of us couple. She's attending art school, and as expected, she's really good. I felt a bit guilty receiving such a generous gift, but she said,
I think of you more as my real sister than an aunt, so accept it.
What a sweet thing to say. When Elizabeth gets married someday, I'll repay her double, no, triple or quadruple with some furniture or something. It was pretty embarrassing to wear a dress 2 years after the wedding, but Kevin said,
You look even more beautiful than the last time you wore it.
I was happy to hear that. I did have bridal beauty treatments, but I've got more wrinkles now, so it's not exactly the same. Kevin is so kind. But right after the ceremony, we let our guard down and started enjoying all-you-can-eat buffets, which is Kevin's hobby. This year, at 48, I've suddenly gained quite a bit of weight. Even Kevin teased me, saying,
You've changed, how about going back to the old Mary? Shut up! Kevin, your hair is thinning at the back too.
That's our way of joking around. I want us to always be a couple who can tease each other and have a friendship-like relationship. We married late, and to live a long life with Kevin, yeah, I need to lose weight. Health is important. All right then, I'm off to go walking with Kevin today.